Lawyers for the migrants who were flown from the Texas border to Martha's Vineyard last year say they've met with the migrants sent to Sacramento, California earlier this week. The state of California is investigating if any laws were broken. Florida officials have acknowledged their role in organizing flights for both groups. Other Republican governors have used the same tactic to highlight the president's border policies, which they say leaves them bearing an extra share of the burden. That burden has eased a little bit in the months since the end of Title 42 border restrictions. The Department of Homeland Security says illegal crossings are down 70% in that time. The number of migrant encounters between ports of entry is averaging at 3,400 each day. That's down from about 10,000 in early May. CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez joins me now. Camilo, what's been the biggest factor driving those numbers down?
The Biden administration, John, would argue that their policies are directly influencing the significant drop in illegal border crossings. Since the Title 42 pandemic policy is no longer in place, all migrants who are coming to the U.S.-Mexico border are being processed under traditional immigration procedures and laws. That means that if migrants cross the U.S.-Mexico border unlawfully, John, they face swift deportation to Mexico or their home country, a 5-year banishment from re-entering the country, and potential criminal prosecution and jail time if they make another subsequent illegal entry attempt. And the administration is also making it increasingly difficult for migrants to avoid deportation by implementing a regulation, John, that disqualifies migrants from asylum if they did not first seek protection in another country. At the same time, the administration has been expanding opportunities for migrants to enter the country legally through an app for asylum seekers in Mexico and a sponsorship program for certain nationalities. So the post-Title 42 migration spike that we all expected, John, did not materialize. But I think most migrants in Mexico are still taking a wait-and-see approach.
Well, that's the question. Wait and see. And does that then mean that this won't be sustainable? This decrease we're seeing might change?
Well, beyond being incredibly complex, John, migration flows are very dynamic and could dramatically change very quickly. One key open question that I'm certainly monitoring is whether lawsuits that are now challenging some of these policies derail this strategy by the Biden administration. Virtually every pillar of the strategy, John, is facing legal challenges in federal court. Republican-led states, including Texas, are asking judges to halt the sponsorship program for migrants. They're also asking a judge to prevent the administration from exempting some migrants from the asylum restriction, which, for example, does not apply, John, to unaccompanied children and victims of human trafficking. And at the same time, the ACLU and other progressive groups are challenging the asylum restriction in court, saying that it violates refugee law. And I would be remiss if I did not underscore, John, that U.S. policy is not the only thing that influences migration. There are things that the U.S. cannot simply control. For example, I can't imagine the situation, the humanitarian crisis in Haiti deteriorating even further, but that could happen and it could prompt more and more Haitians to take to the sea, to go to Mexico. There are millions of Venezuelans displaced across Latin America. If they do not find support systems there in places like Colombia, Peru, they could be uprooted again and come to the border. And so I think these challenges are just going to intensify because of the sheer number of people, these powerful push factors, and just the fact that our immigration system, John, is collapsing. I'll end it with this. There are 700 judges, John, overseeing over 2 million pending unresolved cases in the immigration court system. And our legal immigration system has not been updated or expanded since before I was born, when the Soviet Union was still in power in Russia. So it's been a long time.
Camilo, excellently done, by the way, my friend. Let me ask you very quickly. You did an interview recently with a top immigration official at DHS about criticism the administration's faced over its move to restrict asylum. How did he justify the policy in that interview?
Well, the main argument, John, is that while U.S. asylum law dating back to 1980 gives migrants the legal right to request asylum to avoid deportation, regardless of how they enter the country, the demographic nature of migration and the sheer number of people coming has dramatically changed since then. So this official, Blas Núñez Nieto, who was a top immigration and border policy official at the Department of Homeland Security, told me that these laws don't reflect the reality of the current situation. And it's hard for the government to screen all these migrants in an expeditious manner. Right now, migrants are waiting an average of 4 years to have their cases adjudicated by the courts because of that huge backlog that I mentioned, John. That is bad for everyone. It's bad for the government because they can't determine who qualifies and who doesn't qualify for asylum and who shouldn't be allowed to stay here. But it's bad for migrants with legitimate claims because they're stuck in this legal limbo, John, for years. So it's a broken system. I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but it really is. And I think only congressional action will prompt some durable solution to these crises that we see every administration facing.
A broken system that we're glad you are here to break down for us, though. Camilo Montoya-Galvez, thank you.
John.